Find the derivative of y equals the square root of x plus 5 over 2x minus 7. Then evaluate y prime of 4. Y here is the square root of an entire expression, which itself is a quotient of x plus 5 over 2x minus 7. The square root is the outermost function here. Let's rewrite that as a fractional exponent. Inside of that square root, we do have the quotient, but the entire thing is to the first power, second root, 1/2 power. That means for the derivative, we're going to start off with the power rule for that outermost function. But we will still be making use of the quotient rule when we complete our chain rule, the derivative of the inside. Our derivative, y prime, will be, also known as dy dx here, a power rule. Start with bringing the power down. Subtract 1 from the power. Let's call that 2/2. And now we multiply by the derivative of the inside. Well, the derivative of the inside here is a quotient rule. And the quotient rule will be, here's our inside, the derivative of the numerator, which is just a 1, times the denominator left alone, 2x minus 7, minus the numerator left alone, x plus 5, times the derivative of the denominator, which is a 2. All of that divided by the denominator squared. So we have a 1/2. We have an x plus 5 over a 2x minus 7 raised to the 1 minus 2 negative 1 over 2. And now I'm going to distribute the 1 into the 2x minus 7. So that'll give us a 2x minus 7. And I'm going to distribute the negative and the 2 into the x plus 5. And that will give us a negative 2x and a negative 10. All of this divided by 2x minus 7 squared. Now I can combine like terms together. These two x's will be able to cancel because we have a positive and a negative. We have a negative 7 and a negative 10. Those can combine. So y prime, or dy dx, will equal to, we have a 1/2. Now I'm going to separate each of these into a negative 1/2 exponent. You can write each of those independently to the negative 1/2. They will remain in the numerator and denominator respectively, but each one is raised to that same power if you have the quantity raised to that power. The reason we will want to do something like that is this next fraction I'm about to write. I'm going to combine together the negative 7 and the negative 10. It's negative 17. It also has a denominator involving 2x minus 7. And therefore, we can combine those denominators. These are all being multiplied with each other. And this has the same base as this. We can combine them by adding the exponents. Now right now I have this exponent written as a 2, but instead we can call it 4/2, so it has a common denominator with the negative 1/2. We're now going to multiply the numerators. So now the numerator, we have a 1, we have a negative 17. 1 times negative 17 is negative 17. And we have that x plus 5 to the negative 1/2 power. The denominator, we have a 2 right here, and then we have these which can add their exponents together. And negative 1/2 plus 4/2 will be 3/2. So that will give us a 2x minus 7 to the 3/2 power. Our next step, we can bring that negative exponent down to the denominator. So the negative 17 will be the only thing left in the numerator. And we have 2 times, I will write the x plus 5 next, to the positive 1/2 power by moving it to the denominator, and then the 2x minus 7 to the positive 3 halves power. The only other thing we really can do is rewrite that 1/2 power as square root. So we can write this as 2 times the square root of x plus 5, and then the 2x minus 7 to the 3 halves. There's the simplified version of the derivative, y prime or dy dx. The next thing to do is evaluate y prime of 4. So y prime of 4 means to plug a 4 in for each of the x's. Well, the numerator doesn't have any x's. It'll stay as a negative 17. We have 2 times the square root of 4 plus 5. And we also have 2 times 4 and then minus 7, that entire thing raised to the 3 halves power. That'll give us a negative 17 over 2 times the square root of 4 plus 5 is a 9. And then times 2 times 4 is 8 minus 7 to the 3 halves power. So we have a negative 17 over 2 times the square root of 9 is a 3, and then 8 minus 7 is a 1, so we have 1 raised to the 3 halves power. So negative 17 over 2 times 3 is a 6, and then 3 halves power means the square root of 1, which is 1, and then cube that result. Of course, 1 cubed is just a 1, so this will be a 6 times a 1, and therefore we end up with negative 17 over 6.